global consultants at Deloitte predict that at some point in 2023, RPA will reach near universal adoption. And by 2024, organizations will lower operational costs by 30% by combining realigned processes with RPA, along with a range of hyper-automation tools. And yet many of us haven't begun our RPA journey, or we're only just getting started. And of course, with COVID, that has added additional impact. For us, it's been a bit of a double-edged sword. Limited funding, but pressure to go faster. And of course, a key part of a successful automation program is a robust center of excellence. I'm Wendy Sherrock. I lead the operational effectiveness team at Finaster, which also includes the intelligent automation CoE.
And I'm Lenna Webster. I'm the program manager for Finaster's RPA initiative. And Wendy and I are going to be speaking to you about our experience in setting up the RPA Center of Excellence. We'll be talking about the governance, the standards, what we found worked, and what perhaps didn't work so well. So I will now pass it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Lenna. Great. I'll start off with a quick overview of Finaster and who we are, and then go into the rest of the content that we've prepared for you today. Finaster was formed in 2017 by a combination of Misys and D&H, and we've built software solutions for financial institutions. We have deep expertise with an unrivaled range of pre-integrated solutions spanning retail banking, transaction banking, lending, and treasury and capital markets. With a global footprint and a broad set of financial solutions, Finaster has 1.9 billion in revenues, about 10,000 employees, 8,600 customers, including 90 of the top 100 banks globally. And just to give you a feel for the scope and the scale of the organization, you'll see some of our key statistics. And I'll just call out the one in the center here, just to give you an example of our impact and our reach. Finaster originates about 70 billion in US mortgages annually alone. So hopefully that gives you a sense of who we are. Let me share with you now our journey, our RPA journey. One of the first things we did was we defined what our mission and our vision is. And I'm sure this is quite similar as some of yours, and feel free to share that in the chat as well. But we came up with a very simple mission and vision to analyze, digitize, and remove waste to drive productivity and scalability across the organization. And of course, we want to do that by maximizing the value-added work, taking out all the waste and the non-value added, and quite frankly, the frustrating tasks that employees have to deal with day in and day out. And one of the things that you'll need to do is educate people on what RPA is. Believe it or not, we had some people that were Googling what RPA stood for in some of our early meetings, which quickly helped us to understand that we need to educate people on not only what RPA is, but what it isn't as well. So this is one of our first slides that we created to help share that with other employees. I'm sure you have something similar, or if you don't, we highly recommend that. Of course, we're looking at, from an RPA standpoint, those processes that are manual and highly repetitive, and those that need to really take advantage of structured data. So these are some of the things to educate people on. In terms of benefits, of course, cost savings and financial benefits and productivity, those are all the top ones that we all go after. But there are many other benefits for your RPA program as well. And what we've done here is tried to highlight some of those ancillary benefits, customer experience, risk and compliance. There are many opportunities to drive those improvements and the benefits to the organization. Would love to hear what we're missing, what else you might be tracking in your organization if you've got your RPA program up and running. So that's just to set the stage a bit, and let me share our journey, which has been quite an interesting one, given all the recent events, but we did start our journey back in February of 2019. We did an initial assessment and proof of concept. I'm sure for those of you that are well ahead on your journey started in a similar way, but we came up with a kind of a list of those first few processes that we wanted to automate and proved out the business case essentially. From there, once we knew that we were moving ahead, we had to identify the tool that we would use as well as our system integrator or SI. For us, it was Blue Prism and Robiquity. And then we got started. We were very excited. You know, it's kind of like getting a flywheel started, and we had the flywheel starting to crank. We were building out those processes, and then COVID happened. I like to call it the COVID car crash. And I'm sure many of you felt different types of impacts depending on where you were in your journey. We collaborate with another company, and for them, they actually, it went faster. They had to go faster, but they were also much further ahead. For us, it happened right in the middle of our phase 1 launch. We actually just had launched our first process, and boom. So like many companies, we had to kind of hold on spending, on critical spending, and reassess and reevaluate. The good news is that we're now in a place where we've done another business case. We are getting restarted on our journey, but we do expect some construction along the way. So hopefully that gives you a sense, and I'm sure we all have interesting stories of how our roadmaps have been impacted by all the events that are happening. And of course, as we went down that journey, part of the effort that we really spent, and we built out a whole playbook around this, is, you know, what is our center of excellence and how do we structure it? So I'm pleased to hand it over to Lenna to educate you a little bit more on how we went about that.
Thank you, Wendy. Within our center of excellence, we decided that we should structure it, and I would suggest that anyone else do this as well, in accordance with our organization, to set and align with our organization's culture and structure. So here on the screen in front of us, we can see we've got the centralized center of excellence, and on the other side of the coin, we've got the fully federated center of excellence. I'll talk through each one of these to begin with. A centralized CoE is right in the middle of the organization. All the activity surrounding the RPA initiative takes place from that center. The centralized CoE is responsible for setting up the governance, for setting the standards, including coding standards for your automations, also in sharing knowledge and objects across the organization. End-to-end delivery sits with that central CoE as well. If we move to the federated analysis structure, this is where the lines of business and the functions will actually take on the role of finding the RPA opportunities and thereby building the RPA pipeline. All of the other work is then conducted by the Center of Excellence. If we move again to the federated delivery structure, this is where the rest of the organization will not only conduct their own assessments, but prioritize them as well. So one of the risks of having a centralized CoE is that the Center of Excellence actually can become a bottleneck to releasing the automations depending upon their workload. Finally, in the fully federated structure, this is where the lines of business and the functions within your organization are completely empowered to not only find those opportunities, but to deliver the automations themselves, build and release the digital workers. For the Center of Excellence, they retain the responsibility of ensuring knowledge sharing, building the capability within the organization, and obviously the governance. So for us, I would be very interested to hear some of the different options that you've taken in terms of structuring your CoE. At Finaster, we started with the centralized approach, but we also knew that we would have to, at some point, evolve to the federated structure. And the reason for this is, in the beginning, we wanted to make sure that we established a strong center where we would have the governance, the standards, but also within our organization, we were experiencing a bit of RPA sprawl. And by that, I mean that there were different areas of the organization that were using different tools, experimenting with automation, but not sharing that knowledge. Having a centralized CoE, we felt would bring all of that structure and knowledge into our enterprise solution, ensuring that we got the most benefit out of the automation tool that we were using, as well as making sure that we would be able to establish a robotic operating model, which could then be used consistently by the whole organization. Also, in the beginning of your journey, education and messaging is very important. And we wanted the CoE to have that consistent messaging across the organization. Now, the reason we knew that we would have to eventually move to the federated structure is that Finaster is in an organization that has different lines of businesses. It's very entrepreneurial, and we knew that there was a risk that the Center of Excellence could become a bottleneck for the rest of the organization, being creative, getting the real value that we would want them to have from the automation solution. So with the federated version, the lines of business will get that benefit faster. You extend the knowledge and you extend the capability across the organization. We also wanted to have the correct roles within the Center of Excellence. So on the screen, we have the different roles that we chose to be part of that group. The head of RPA is Wendy, who I'm presenting with today. A very important role is the discovery manager. The discovery manager is responsible for liaising with the different areas of the business, reviewing all of the business processes, and finding the real RPA opportunities that will give a good return on investment. The discovery manager builds the pipeline. That then gets fed into the delivery team. The delivery manager, which is myself, is responsible for that building of the automations, the training of the digital workers, if you will, ensuring that the priorities are met and that we deliver on time. Now, any project really requires that you bring the people, the hearts and minds of the organization need to come with you. To achieve that, we put change management right in the middle of the Center of Excellence. The change managers are there to help us reduce some of the RPA anxiety that we, at least, found within our organization when you first introduced the idea of automation. It helped to establish a mindset where people can embrace automation rather than fearing that advancement. We actually went to the point where we knew that we would have to have well-defined roles and responsibilities to get that CoE factory moving properly. So we did do role descriptions and we hired the right people into those roles. Now, the Center of Excellence can be as effective as you wish. It can have the right structure, but it does not operate, at least does not operate effectively in a vacuum. So it operates in a universe. So what we have is the CoE ecosystem. And we've called out the different functions and areas of the organization that we believe are absolutely essential to a successful RPA program. So I'll call out just a few of these. The first one I'd like to call out is human resources. So along the lines of having change management right at the center of our work, when you introduce automation, you do impact on the roles that people are performing, the tasks that they're doing every day. Even if you are removing the manual tasks that they really don't like, you're still having an impact, and that can cause people to have some anxiety. Also, if you want to truly have an integrated human and digital workforce, HR needs to be involved, as you might have job descriptions, for example, where part of the job is performed by a human and part of the job is performed by a digital worker. We also found that having finance in our corner was especially helpful. Now, RPA, you can, of course, have quantitative benefits assigned to it, but a lot of the benefits in RPA are softer benefits that many can find difficult to quantify or to monetize. So having finance involved means that we had a function that can help us determine what really is the return on investment to help us set the standards and the measures for our success. And the last one I want to mention is security. We found, and I think this is true for every RPA initiative, we had to rewrite some of our security processes. We had to introduce new user profiles, new ways of setting up the digital workers. There are policies in every organization that make sense for a human workforce, but perhaps don't work when the workforce is digital. An example here I'll call out is multi-factor authentication, or MFA. At Finaster, this is conducted by a text message that is sent to a staff member's mobile phone. They then take that code from the text message, plug it into the screen, and then they're allowed access to a particular system. Digital workers don't have mobile phones, so sending them a text message is not necessary. So we did have to rewrite a number of security policies in order to suit this new world. Now, a center of excellence working within that universe has three main things to do. And there's a quote from a book called The Light in the Heart that I think sums that up particularly well. So don't just change, transform. So in this sense, we are able to control the mindset and the understanding of what RPA is. We found that there were numerous misconceptions about what RPA is, including that some people thought they were actual physical entities in the office that would be able to bring people a cup of tea when they came into our reception area. Unfortunately, that's not what they are. This is software purely. And we need to make sure that we educate individuals and we transform the way they think about automation, that we reduce the potential anxiety and we get them to see the benefit. The next one, don't just relate, advocate, takes this a step further. So we don't want individuals who are just necessarily thinking that this is a new technology being introduced, but it's not really for them. You want to find some real champions who will take hold of the automations, understand that they can provide solutions that meet their functional goals, and will help the discovery manager understand where the opportunities are. And finally, don't just promise, but prove. So you've spoken to your leaders, you've had your business case, and now you have to actually show that you are getting the return on investment that you expected. Now you can, and you should, in my opinion, write some reporting into your automations based on the key success factors that you've determined. And then you will have right in front of you on a piece of paper the proof that the benefit is there and you're getting that expected value. An important point as well is to make sure that you cultivate the capability across the organization, that you really build the talent around the automation. So some key parts of this is that you must have those technical skills. You must have a technical architect who is able to ensure that you've got a sound platform that is efficient, that is optimized, and will support your scaling goals. Obviously, you need to have the developers to create those automations, but business analysis skills are another key item for your success. That is finding the right opportunities, building the pipeline so that you get your factory of RPA working from the pipeline to development, to bringing the people and the mindsets along the way to make your RPA initiative a success. We also found that it's incredibly helpful to learn from others. So we have paired up with another organization much further ahead in the journey than we are, but we've been able to learn a tremendous amount from their experience, and we can encourage you to go out and share with other people who are doing this. You are certainly welcome to contact myself and Wendy, and we'd be happy to discuss it with you. Finally, in summary, this is what I like to call the CoE flower, and it essentially sums up what the CoE is doing for the organization. So they are setting the vision and the mission. They are also defining the robotic operating model, helping with the change management to get the adoption through the organization to set the automation mindset. They are understanding the value, ensuring that there is a key way of measuring your success and reporting back on that. They are setting the standards, not just for the culture, but literally coding standards. They are there to encourage faster delivery. That could be in sharing scripts. That could be in ensuring a prioritized list is available. And finally, making sure you have your RPA opportunities ready to go, building that pipeline, understanding where automations can really add the value. There are some processes where automation doesn't necessarily make sense. I'm going to pass over to Wendy, who's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes, and it is all about finding those opportunities. And once again, as I said earlier, you will have to educate the organization to help find those opportunities. And there are, regardless of your industry, there are 4 categories of tasks that best fit RPA. So I always like to start here to help kind of get people socialized around what is a good fit for RPA. First of all, updating information. I'm sure, like us, many of you have some type of process to update addresses in your, clean up addresses in your system. So that's one example. Migrating information from one system to another, especially where you have what we call swivel chair updates, where you have to take information from one system and rekey it into another system. Urgent tasks, for example, if you have a data breach, much better to have a digital worker that's responding to that in instantaneous manner versus waiting on a human to notice that's happening. And from a similar perspective, system monitoring, if a system goes down, it would benefit greatly to have a digital worker who can instantaneously respond to that as well. So those are kind of the 4 high-level categories. In terms of the identifying those opportunities and ensuring it has the right characteristics, this is kind of a good list to start from. And it does need to be rule-based. You do want the right kind of volume. We've had quite a few people who they find opportunities for automation, but it's something that's only updated once a month, and that's just not enough time. You do want it to be prone, if it's prone to human error, that's a good candidate for RPA. And it does need to be a stable process. So we have a few that have also come forward, but they're still in the process of making a lot of changes. And that would be kind of hard to manage from an RPA standpoint. You want to get to the point where the process is more stable. And I'm sure many of you have said this yourselves, that we don't want to automate a bad process. And that's kind of a part of that puzzle. And I'll speak a little bit more to that in a couple of slides. But hopefully this gives, we use this slide to help educate others in the organization on what is a good fit. And then we connect that to our request form and our discovery questionnaire, which you see here. So first on the left-hand side, you'll notice we've got a process request form, and we tell people up front it's not a quick, it's relatively short, but it will take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, because we want to gather some of that information to make sure that we have enough to prioritize. Now, for those that aren't sure what is a good candidate, we have links to more information. We have a Yammer channel where we have videos published and other articles and other resources that help people understand what RPA is. We have had people actually Googling what that means, so we wanted to try to provide that. And we also set up an email that people can use to reach out to us as well. And I would encourage any of you who would like to stay connected. We're still learning, would love to work with you and learn with you as well. On the right-hand side, you'll see the deeper dive discovery questionnaire, where once again, we are probing in, we're asking about the volumes, we're trying to get to how many systems are actually being touched, the amount of time that we're looking at, because that will all feed into our business case. So that's the kind of information we gather, and the way that we ensure that when we're prioritizing, we have all the right data to make those key decisions. So like I said earlier, we don't want to automate a bad process. So how do we figure out whether or not that's the case? We do have a process framework at Finaster, and when we have an opportunity, we start with the framework to understand how the process is working today, and we do kind of an initial higher level assessment, more of a business optimization opportunity assessment, and from there we can kind of qualify whether or not it's even ready to consider for RPA, or do we need to initiate some business optimization activities. It could even be just ensuring that we have the process documented. But again, I'm sure many of you have said it, like I said before, we don't want to automate a bad process. So once it is ready for RPA, then we do that deeper dive assessment and make sure that with the discovery, we have all the information we need, do an initial level of prioritization and get sign off to proceed. We build that, deploy our digital workforce, and then of course make sure that we feed any of those changes back into our process framework. So that's how we kind of pull all those pieces together. We want to wrap up by sharing some of the common challenges that we've experienced, and then we'll share some of our lessons learned as well. We wanted to narrow to a few key challenges. First of all, and we hear this a lot in the industry too, there's always a challenge in demonstrating the ROI and the value. And so to address that, we first of all look kind of across the organization. We look at multiple work streams and ensure that we are defining key measures of success up front. And the other thing we do is work very closely with our finance business partner. So in the universe that Lenna shared earlier, that is part of our ecosystem, and the finance business partner is just a key stakeholder to work very closely with. Along those lines, funding and chargebacks deciding how you're going to do that, that still is a challenge that we're working through. We've got a model we're testing now. But what you want to do, again, is work with your finance business partner and test whether a value sharing model might work, or do you want to charge back the cost of the bots in the center of excellence, or do you just manage that within the CoE? So those decisions need to be made depending on your company and how you're structured. But that finance business partner will help you. And then finally, it kind of goes back to the first one, as well as educating people on what RPA is and isn't, but those misaligned expectations, ensuring people do understand clearly what RPA does, but also what it's not capable of, and defining those measures of success. I know that sounds like a common theme, and it definitely is for us. So this is a good opportunity now to kind of summarize many of the lessons learned that we've gathered along the way. Lenna, which two would you call out?
So I would call out one that I alluded to earlier, which is you need to start defining your setup, your support and change protocols early. So this is the liaison with the security team, setting up your new profiles, also ensuring that you agree how the RPA is going to be supported once it's in operation. The other one that I would like to call out is it's extremely important to have a very good partnership between the technical team and the business SMEs. The people actually writing the automations or training the robots really have to get into the minds of those business owners and understand to a very low level how the process is run, how it can be optimized, and the best way to automate it. Those are my two, Wendy.
Wonderful. And the two that I would call out, first of all, when it comes to developing your CoE model, Lenna said this earlier, but I think it's worth reiterating that you want to factor in the culture of the organization, your organization structure, and really kind of think through the different types of models that Lenna presented, everything from fully central to fully federated. The other one that I wanted to mention, and I'll kind of land on this because to me this one is such a critical one, and that is that my best advice to you is don't go it alone. You know, for us, we found Robiquity to help us along the way. You know, it was important to find those experts because we were all new to this, and Robiquity has been super helpful. They are pragmatic. They're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and kind of get into the details with you. But most importantly, they teach you to fish. I encourage you to find that partner that makes sense for you. And do reach out to us as well at RPA at Finaster.com. We would love to both collaborate and learn from what you've learned as well. So I would encourage you to add any lessons learned, advice that you've had in the chat, as well as any questions, and we're happy to address those as well. So we are still at the beginning of our journey, but we hope that hearing some of the approach that we've taken so far, the challenges as well as the lessons learned, helps you in your journey. And we'll encourage you all to ask questions in the chat.